I'm going to show you how to clean up your scanned drawings, which are made in black and white, um, to then use later on in different softwares such as Photoshop, Illustrator, and AVA to create designs and make repeat patterns using your handmade marks. So this is a scanned drawing, which is very grey at the moment, and once I've cleaned it up it would then look like this. So the marks, the black marks, are clean, crisp and dark, and the background is very clean and again crisp and white. So there's lots of contrast and much easier to then copy from and create patterns and designs. So first thing you would do is, if I go back to my scanned grey image, I'll use this one. So this was scanned at 300 dpi. You can do exactly the same by using a camera if you've got one. So make sure the resolution is high if you can, between 150 and 300, just to keep the quality good, so high resolution. So if you click into image, down to adjustments and across to desaturate, this would get rid of all the colour in your image, so then you can concentrate on just the grayscales to define the contrast. So you go back to image, adjustments, and now to levels. So you've got this pop-up menu on the screen. So if you click on the light grey part at the top, you can actually move it around. So if it's on your image, just move it across to the side. And the bit you're going to concentrate on is input level. So you've got the dark greys in your image, the mid greys, and the light backgrounds. So it's a case of just moving the arrows across just to get a good balance between the different levels, but you need all the marks to be dense black. But again, it's a balance, so you don't want to lose too much of your nice painterly marks, but you do want to keep the density. So just going to play around here so you can see what's going on there. So once you're happy with it, you've got a good balance, then you can click OK to save that setting. So if I go across to the next one, we do the same: image, adjustments, desaturate, then image, adjustments, and levels. So again, use the levers to just create a good balance there. That looks pretty good. And click OK. So there you are, you've got your marks now. So before I save it, I need to first just crop any of the edges that need cropping. I've got a mark there just in the corner which I don't want to have in my design page, so I'm just going to use the crop tool, which is this one here. Click on it and you can then move the edges up and across that you want to just crop. Okay, so once you're happy, click enter on your keyboard and that will set it there. Again, I'll do the same in the next page. So I can see here I'm still in the crop tool tab, so it's automatically allowing me to crop if I want to. So I'll move that just down and the edge here just across, and those edges are fine there. And then click enter to then get rid of the parts you are cropping. So now we can save the image, but first we need to just check the size. So if you click on image then image size. I'm going to make this window just across here. So my resolution is still 300, that's good. The width and the height, you've got them there in centimetres, so it's roughly A3 size, which is good. Good size to use. So you can save it as A3 or A4 size. But if you want to use big marks for your pattern, save it as A3, because if it's A4, the marks will be quite small. If you enlarge it, they might pixelate. So it's just a slight risk. So it's better to save it as A3 in that case. Right, click OK. So that's all saved. And then again, I'll just check the other page. So image and image size. Again, 300 and A3 size, which is perfect. So click OK. If you notice, once you save your image, your setting is in inches. You can just click on the arrows on the right hand side, and then it will bring up the menu for centimetres, inches, millimetres. They're the three that are most used, so I tend to like to use centimetres. And click OK. So now we can save the file. So you click into File, Save As, save onto your computer. And if you notice, the layers box is ticked. We have to cancel this and just flatten the image so we don't have any layers. So you click Cancel. So you click Layer, Flatten Image. And if you're not quite sure, bring up your Layers menu, click Window, Layers, and then you can see it's now flattened as a background, which is perfect. So we can save it now. So File, Save As. Again, save onto your computer, and you can see that the layers box is now greyed out. So it means the image is flattened. So let's give it a name. So I'm going to call it Mark Making 1. And I've already got a folder for it to go in. So you can either save it on your desktop and then go back and create a folder. It's up to you, which is what I did previously. So I'm going to keep it in the Mark Making folder, and I'm going to save it as a TIFF. The reason is TIFF just retains more information than a JPEG. So I'm going to save as much information and image quality for my design work. So you click Save. Make sure image compression is on none, and everything else is okay. So click OK. So now we've saved the file and we can open it in Photoshop again and use those marks to make design and pattern repeat tiles, and also in AVA you can open up the files and design with as well. I'm going to show you in this video how to create a tile design for repeat using defined brushes which are taken from your mark making document. So I've created a document here which is my tile design, and it's 3 inches by 3 inches at 300 dpi. And I've also opened up my mark making documents which I've used in previous videos, and I'm going to copy marks from my document and use them as brushes to design with. So I'm going to first use the object selection tool from the toolbar, and I'm going to select a mark that I'd like to use as a brush. So if I select this mark here and click into edit, define brush preset, and I'm going to name this brush lines, then OK. And I'm currently in my brush tool, so if you are as well, you'll see your defined brush on the screen already. And what I'm going to do is just look in the settings, and I'm just going to play around with the settings before using that brush. I'm going to click back into my tile document, and on the right hand side of this of the screen, I've got brush settings here. If you don't have that, you can bring it up by clicking into window and then scroll down to brush settings on the menu. So I'm going to go into my settings, and I'm going to click first into brush tip shape, which is the first selection on the menu at the top here. And I can see my brush library here. So this is the brush I've just defined and saved. If you scroll down to the bottom, you've got spacing. So if you move the lever, you can actually set the spacing between each of the brush marks whilst you're drawing. So I'm going to leave that as there. I'm going to then click into Shape Dynamics, which is the one just below. You can also change the jitter of those marks as well, which is quite nice. And if I go into Scatter, again, you can scatter those marks as well. So you can play with those settings as you like, and you can see a preview of what you'll get created. So you select them, set them as you like. I'm just going to minimize that window, and you can see I've got my defined brush here on the document. So obviously it's quite large at the moment, so I can rescale that brush mark by using the right and left hand bracket tabs on the keyboard. So if I click on the right hand one, it will make the mark bigger, and the left one will make it smaller. So I'm just going to make it smaller. And I'm going to create a layer for that mark to stay in. So first I'm going to click on the background layer, and I'm going to go up at the top here, my swatches panel. I'm going to select a background colour. So I'm going to go for this nice blue there. And then I'll click into the paint bucket tool, which is halfway down your toolbar. And a shorthand key for the fill feature is pressing the Alt key down, holding it down, and then pressing the backspace tab on the keyboard. So if I just click on the fill bucket, then Alt backspace, that will fill your document with the colour. So I'm going to go back to layer 1, and I'm going to use my brush tool, so you can see it there, and I'm just going to select another colour for it. So I'm going to go for this nice dusk pink, and if you hold your mouse key down and just start drawing with that mark, you'll see the scatter and the settings that you've preset. So once you let go, obviously the marks will stop. if I just go back a step, and you can also just click with the mouse and you'll see the mark will start rotating to the, again, scatter and spacing settings you've preset. So you can have a play with the marks. Just gonna make it slightly bigger, just to fill the document. So if you're not happy with the angle that you have, you can click off the document. If I zoom out, you can click off the document and you'll get the next angle. So that might be a better angle for what you need to fill. So you keep going. I'm going to put that one there, and this one here, and let's put this one there. So the trick is not to go off the document, so stay within the edges, and that will make it easier for when you put your tile into repeat. I'm just going to keep it within there. Okay, so I'm going to create a second layer, and I'm going to go back to my mark making document, and I'm going to choose a different mark to use and do exactly the same. So object selection tool, I'm going to go for the squares here. So I'm just trying to, going to use the magic wand for this one, and if you hold the shift key down, you will select a lot of them at the same time. So I'm going to do exactly the same. Edit, define brush. I'm going to call that squares. Then OK. You can see the brush is there. I'm going to go back to my document, and I'm just going to play around with the settings again. See what I can create. And I'm going to choose a different colour as well for my mark. So I'm going to go for this nice yellow. I'm going to just make the marks smaller again. There you go. So that's going to be my tile for repeat, and in the next video I'm going to show you how to use the offset tool to then create a repeat with your tile. In this video I'm going to show you how to use the offset tool to put your tile into a repeat and fill in any areas, gaps that you might get in your repeat prior to defining it as a pattern. So the first thing you need to do is to merge your layers. So I've got layer 1 and layer 2, so I need to merge those two layers. So I'm going to select them both, click into layer, scroll down to merge layers. So now I've got a background layer and a pattern brushes layer in a way. So I'm going to first duplicate this layer. So I'm going to select that layer and go to layer and duplicate. I'm going to call it layer copy, and then OK. So the reason why I've duplicated it is because later on we can use that layer to then create special effects to then create an even more interesting defined pattern for repeat. So at the moment I'm going to hide this layer because I'm not going to use it at the moment. I'm going to use it later, but I'm going to switch back to the active layer here. So I'm going to click into filter, scroll down to other, and then across down to offset. So if you click into the box of horizontal and vertical boxes, just click in, type in 0 to start with, which will reset your tile into the right position. And make sure in this selection here, you've got wrap around selected and the others not. So now you can bring your arrow, select arrow at the top left corner, hold the mouse down and move down to the center of your tile. And what it does is it will wrap your repeat around your tile, so then you'll see the gaps which are here visible on your tile document. So those gaps you need to do something about, so you can use your brushes to fill in those gaps, for example. So if you get rid of your offset window for now, we don't need that now, we can see the gaps we need to work with, so click OK. So what I'm going to do is go back into my brushes and I'm going to select the square brush to then fill in some of the gaps. I'm going to preset the spacing again and scatter, so that's okay. I'm going to use the same colour, so it's already selected, so that's fine, and I'm just going to make the brushes smaller. And again, if you want a specific angle, just click off the document and you can use the angle which perfectly fits in that gap. So let's put one here as well. That's better. So we can fill in that gap there. And you can also move one of the marks. So if you use your lasso tool, you can say select that mark there, or it might be better to use the magic wand and you can use the move tool to then move those marks around to fill in those gaps. So I'm just going to move those across there and maybe one of those here. And you can also change rotation, so it's really useful thing to do as well. So I'm just going to use move, I think that one as well, just to close in that space. And what I've done just a second ago, I had, I'll just go back, I had a little bit of pink, um, which was left due to the fact that I moved the orange square across. So I filled it with the blue background. So I used the picker, which is here, to then click on the blue background, and that will give me the blue fill colour picker at the bottom. And I used the lasso tool to select that pink area. Then I used the shortcut key of Alt backspace to then fill it. So that got rid of any leftover colour from the move. So now I can define this tile as a pattern. So to do that, you click into Edit, Define Pattern, and you can name it. So I'm going to name it Repeat Brushes. Then OK. And if I create a new document to see what the pattern would look like, I'm just going to use an A4 page for now, just to fill it and see what the pattern looks like. So I'm going to go on the right hand side and click into the circle tab, which is half filled at the bottom. Then scroll up to pattern, and you'll get the pattern fill window here. And if you click on the drop down menu, you'll get all your pattern library pop up, so you can actually scroll through and select your pattern. So this is the one that I've just defined. And again, if I go up to the scale, I can rescale it to see it in different scales. So this is 20%, and this is 70 and 100. So that's my pattern as it is at the moment. So if I click cancel for now, I'll go back to my tile, and remember that I saved an extra layer. So if I make that layer visible now and click into that layer, then if you scroll up at the top menu bar here, it's a drop down menu, and at the moment it says normal. So if I click on the drop down arrow, you'll get different settings or effects for your layer. So if you use the down arrow key, you can go through those different effects and see what kind of outcomes you can create with that duplicate layer. So you can get really interesting effects, and you can then define that pattern into that effect. So if I choose one, let's go for that one. That's it. This one here. So now I can define, I'll have to merge the layers first to define it. So if I go to layer, merge layers, and then you can click back into edit, define pattern, and if I save that as 2, then OK, and I'll go back to my A4 document, go into the tab, pattern, and then that's my new defined pattern. So by saving that extra or duplicate layer, you can use it to create additional effects for your pattern. So now I'm going to show you how to create a design tile to then put into repeat. So I'm going to use this document here, the range of marks on the screen. I've cleaned them up so the contrast is really good and ready to use. So the first thing you have to do is create your tile. So click into File and New, and click at the top here into Print, and I'm going to customize my tile size. So I'm going to give it a name first. So I'm going to call it Tile Design, and I'm going to work in centimeters. So you can change that to centimeters, and my tile is going to be 10 centimeter square. So the height and width will be 10 centimeters. I'm going to keep the orientation as it is, and I'm going to keep the resolution to 300, which matches my mark making document. And I'm going to work in colour, keep it as 8-bit, and I'm going to have a white background, so that's all perfect. And then we click into Create. So this is my tile ready to use. So I'll flick back into my previous document of the mark making brushes, and I'm going to select a mark. So to do that, you can use this tool here, which is called Object Selection Tool. If you click on it to select it, you draw a box around the mark you want to use, just like this. And once you let go of the mouse, it will only select the black areas of that mark. So now we can copy it. So Edit, Copy. Then we'll flick back to my tile and we are going to paste it. So Edit, Paste Special, and across to paste in place. So that mark will be then pasted as a separate layer, which is here, which means you can actually go back to that layer and edit it. So you can rescale it, you can add a different colour into it as you like. So you can see my mark is quite big. I quite like it to be rescaled. So to do that, you click into the Move tool, which is at the top here. And with this tool, you can rescale your mark to the size you like it. You can also move it, and you can also rotate it, all using the same tool, which saves you a lot of time. So I'm going to just make it slightly bigger, and once you're happy with the size and orientation, you can click the Enter tab on your keypad and it will set that selection in place. So now you can go back to your mark making document, and you can select a different brush this time. So to get rid of the selection box for my previous selection, you click Command D on your keyboard, which will get rid of that selection. Then you can use the same tool again, which is the Object Selection tool. And I'm going to go for this mark here and copy it. So the shortcut on your keyboard for copying is Command C. Then you click back to your tile design, and you can use the shortcut for this as well for pasting, which is Command V. And again, to rescale it, you use the Move tool, and if you hold down the Shift key at the same time as using your mouse or keypad to rescale it, it will keep the proportions of your mark, so it won't distort it. It's a really useful thing to use, and you'll use it a lot if you're doing a lot of digital design. So you can move the mark wherever you like, and again you can rotate it as well. So I'm just going to move that one up again. Once you're happy, click the enter key on your keypad, and I'm going to choose another mark. So object selection tool, select the mark you like, Command C for copy, go back to your design tile and Command V for paste. And again, use the move tool with the shift key held down to then rescale your mark. So that's good there. So I'm going to click enter, and I'm just going to choose one more mark just up here. So Command C to copy, click back to your tile, Command V, and use the move tool to then move the mark and rescale it. So again, you can just rotate it and click the enter keypad once you're happy. And you'll notice on the right hand side you've got your layers panel, so you can move it up and down to see all of your layers panel by just hovering the key at the top there, and you'll get the double arrows. Once you do, you can hold the mouse down and you can move the panel up and down like that. So you can see all of those marks are in separate layers. So now you can click into them separately and add a different colour to them. So the next stage or the next step will be adding colour to those layers. I'm going to show you how to add colour to the layers, and also to add a layer for a background colour. So first thing you need to do, I'm going to add a new layer, and that will be my background colour. So you click layer, new, a layer. You can add a name to it, so I'm going to call it background colour and click OK. You will see a new layer will be added at the top of your layers panel. So I'm going to move it to the bottom just under layer 1. So to do that, you click on it, move it down with your mouse until you get the blue line under layer 1. Let go and it will sit just underneath the layer. So the next thing I can do is to add colour into the marks that I've created. So I'm going to just hide all the layers to concentrate on each mark and to make sure I have a good selection for the colour. I'm going to click on the eye tab at the left hand side of each layer, and that will hide all the information in the layers, so it makes it easy for me to reselect the mark again. I'm going to use the object select tool, draw a box around it, let go of the mouse. Oh, and that's telling me I haven't selected that specific layer, so click OK. And I can see my background layers selected, so I need to click into the correct layer and try again. So I've got a good selection there, but I can see that some areas haven't selected, so I'm going to hold down the shift key and then draw another box to select those additional areas. So I'm going to do that a third time, and you can see it's all selected. Some of these areas won't select very well because they're quite grey, and it will only be the really dark marks that would select quite well. So we can rectify that anyway in a minute. So now we go into select, modify, and expand. So I'm gonna expand the outside selection area by 2 pixels and then click OK. And now I can fill the area in. And what the modify feature does is it will stop you getting a black line around your filled mark. Sometimes you will fill in an area and you will still have that dark edge around the outside. So use the modify feature tool, it will get rid of that dark outline. So now I can select a colour, and if you just go across to the toolbar on the left hand side at the bottom, you've got two boxes. So the one at the foreground is the foreground colour, and the box behind that is the background colour. So I'm going to click onto the foreground box, and you will get the colour picker. So this is where you choose your colour, and you can use the lever on this panel here to move up and down the colour chart, and you can choose a colour. So I'm going to just choose a nice turquoise blue there, and I want it in my swatch library, so it'll make it easier for me to just go back and use that same colour. So here you've got colour libraries and you've got add to swatches, so you can use either one. I'm going to save it to the colour library. So click into the colour library. That will give me more options of the different Pantone ranges of that colour that I've chosen. So I'm going to stick to the one I've chosen, click OK, and you can see that the blue I chose is added to the swatches panel here, and all these colours at the top I've chosen previously and added to my swatches. It just makes it easier for you to go back and use the same colour. So now I'm going to use that blue, so you can see it selected in the foreground colour picker there under the bottom of the toolbar, and then you go to edit, fill, content panel is a drop down menu, so I want the foreground colour to be used, and then we click OK. So now if I deselect my mark, Command D, you can see that you don't have that dark line around the edge of the mark, which is great. But I do have some parts here which I can either get rid of by using the eraser, or I can try and fill in. But for this instance, I'm going to erase those marks. So I'm going to zoom in first, Command plus on the keyboard, and I'm going to click the eraser tool on the left hand side. Make sure you're in the correct layer. And now I'm just going to get rid of those marks. And you can make the eraser tool larger by clicking on the right side bracket on the keypad. So you can make it bigger so it's much quicker to use, and if you want to fix some really small areas, it's the left bracket tab on your keypad, so you can go really small and correct those areas. So I'm going to leave this as it is now. So I'm going to zoom out. A quick way to have the whole design panel on the screen is to press Command 0, and you'll have the whole document on the screen, so it's easier for you to zoom out. So now I can go to the second layer. So you can either hide what you've done and it's easier for you to then select the second mark. So I'm going to hide it and I'm going to select layer 2 and I'm going to do exactly the same object selection tool. Select that mark. I'm going to just zoom in again, so Command plus, and I can see some areas here that I haven't selected, so I'm going to press down the Shift key at the same time and reselect those areas if I can. So Shift key again, another select panel. So this area I might erase. So these are the decisions you have to make when you're designing your tiles. So I'm going to use a different colour. So I flick back into this swatches panel. I'm going to choose a dusk pink. And I'm going to go to select, modify, expand, 2 pixels again, and OK. And I'm going to fill using the foreground colour, which is the dusk pink. And I'm going to deselect, and you can see that I've got a few discrepancies here, so I'm going to erase those areas again. So I'm just going to zoom in, use the eraser tool, and I'm just going to get rid of those areas there. So I've got another one here. It's not going to make a massive difference to the outcome, so I'm just going to get rid of them. So Command 0 to have a full screen of your design, and I'm going to bring back the previous layer just to see the two together, so you can see it's working quite well. I'm just going to add a background color, so I'm going to hide layer 1 and layer 2 just so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to choose a different colour from my swatches again. I'm going to use this olive green, and this time I'm just going to fill the background. So edit, fill, foreground colour, then OK. So whenever you need to fill a layer, you need to make sure it's visible. So I previously just tried to fill it, but realised it was hidden. So I had to make the layer visible in order to work in it as well. So I'll bring back layer 1 and layer 2. So you can see you've got a background and those marks have got now colour. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to put your now finished tile into repeat. I'm going to show you now how to put your design tile into a repeat pattern, and it will be a straight block repeat on a separate document. First thing you need to do is to flatten your image, so flatten all the layers on the right hand side. To do that, go up to Layer and scroll down to the bottom of Merge Visible. So that will give you a compressed image layer. Next thing you need to do is to define that pattern in your pattern library, so you can use it as a repeat in a different document. To do that, you click into Edit, Define Pattern, and you can give a name for that design. So I'm going to call it Tile Design 1. Click OK. and it will add it to your pattern library. So at the top on the right hand side you've got your colour panel, swatches, and then patterns. So you can scroll through the pattern library and you'll see it is added into your library, and you can use it as a pattern repeat. If you don't have that section on the right hand side, you can click into window and then scroll down to patterns. Once you click onto it, it will bring up your pattern library and you should see it in your library added. So now I'm going to create a new document to see what the pattern looks like as a repeat. So File, New, and I'm going to go across to Print, and I'm going to use an A3 document size page. So I'm going to name it Tile Design Repeat 1. You can name it whatever you like. You've got the A4 dimensions already set, and I'm gonna just change the orientation to horizontal. Resolution is 300, which is correct. I'm gonna use color, 8-bit is fine. I've got a white background, which is perfect. So click create. So now I've got my document for my repeats. So now I'll go back into my patterns library and select that pattern that I want to use. And just at the bottom on the right hand side, you've got a tab that looks like a circle which is half filled on a diagonal. And if you hover your mouse over it, it will tell you the name of that tab. So I'm going to click onto it and then go up towards the top, click into pattern, and you'll see that your pattern is now filled that document page, so you can see it as a repeat. And you can also in the pop-up menu you can edit it, so you can edit the scale, so you can use the lever and you can click on the arrow, drop down arrow. You can use the lever, which sometimes is a bit tricky to get a certain percentage scale. So you can click into the box, delete what's already in there, and you can manually type the percent you want. So this is 45%. You can go lower, 20%, and obviously you can go higher to 150, which will really scale it up in the page. So once you're happy with the scale you want to use, I'm going to go 50%, click OK, and there's your pattern there. So you can see on the right hand side that pattern layer is separate. So now you can add a new layer. So if you go to layer at the top, new layer, you can create a new layer to work in, so you can carry on working, editing with that pattern background. So I'm going to call a new layer Design Repeat 2. I'm just making it up. Okay, so you can see you've got a separate layer from the pattern, and you can start to work on that layer separately in conjunction with your other layers. So if I hide my pattern layer so I can see what I'm doing, I can just use a paintbrush, for example, a paintbrush tool or brush tool, and I'll go back to my swatch panel and choose a colour. This is just to show you as an example. I'm just going to use a brush tool and I'm just going to randomly paint on there. If I make that layer visible, you can see you've got a second layer on top of your pattern. So you can be really creative, and I'll show you a few tricks in the next video of how to use layers in conjunction with each other. In this video, I'm going to show you how to apply different effects into your layers to then define them as part of your repeat pattern. So first of all, I'm going to duplicate the patterned layers first. So I'm going to click on the top layer, then hold the shift key down, click into the last layer. Then I'm going to click on my mouse and then just move all those layers and click into the Create Layer tab at the bottom right of the screen, which looks like a box with a plus in the middle. Once you let go, you'll see that your layers have been duplicated. So just so I can make sure I'm looking at the right layers for each stage, I'm going to keep those layers highlighted, and I'm going to click down into the new folder tab, create new group. So click into that and you'll see that you've got a new folder at the top. If you double click on the text, you can then delete the text and rename it. So I'm going to call that folder copies. So I know the duplicate layers are all together in that folder, and I'm using the original layers here. So if I double click in the arrow for the copies layer, it will bring up those layers. So I'm just going to hide them back in the folder. So the reason why I've duplicated those layers is because later in the last stage we can then bring them back up and we can apply different visual effects for those layers, and you'll see the outcomes at the end. So the first thing I'm going to do is define this pattern. So I'm going to go to Edit, Define Pattern. I'm going to name it Pattern 1. Click OK. So you'll see in the right hand side I've got my Patterns tab open, and I can see that pattern is now in my library, which I can use as a fill. So if I click into my A4 document, I've already got a fill there. So if I get rid of that and go back to a plain white background document, I can then scroll down to the circle tab, which is half filled at the bottom, go up to pattern, and I can bring up my library with the drop down menu, and I've got my fill here. So again, just to remind you, you can adjust the scale to which scale you'd like to use. So this is 20%, and I'll go to 100%. Then click OK. So that's the pattern as it would be without the additional layers that we've saved. So if I click back into my tile, I'm gonna click onto the copies, and I'm gonna hide the original layers for now, and I'll hide the background. I'll make it visible just so I can see what I'm doing. So now I've got the copies. So if I just make those visible and bring them back, you can see it's the copies. And I'm going to click into layer 1. So now if I click on the move tool, I can move and rotate and rescale that mark, just so it doesn't sit on top of the original mark. So when we make the special effects, we can actually see a different range of marks with the special effects. So I'm just going to rescale it and move it around, and I'm going to do that with every layer. So once you've rescaled it, rotated it, moved it, you need to click enter on the keypad to set that position. So I'm going to go to my other layer. I'm just going to move that one in a different location so then I can see it with the effects, and I'm going to go to the other layer, move that one across here as well, rotate it, click enter, and I'm going to do the last layer, so maybe I can make that one slightly smaller. I know the other one is going to be large, so let's just rescale that one. And that's it. So I'm going to now bring up all the layers so I can see them in conjunction. And if you still need to move layers around, you can see which layer you need to move and use the move tool, and you can then move it to a different location so it works a bit better. So if I move that one as well up here, so that's quite balanced, so that's good. So I'm gonna apply the visual effects to my copied layers. So I will select them all at the same time. So by clicking on the top layer, hold the shift key down and clicking into the bottom layer of the copied set, then you've got them all selected at the same time. So at the top here, where it says opacity, so on the left hand side you've got a drop down menu. So at the moment I've got it selected on normal, but if you bring up the library, you can then click on the drop down arrow to move your selection down, and you can see as you move through the effects you will see different effects happening in your document. So you can play around, you can select a few of the layers at the same time and you can see what effects you can get. So maybe you only want a few of those layers at a certain effect, and then you can select a different set and do exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to go through the list and see what sort of effect I can create. So I'll keep that as there, and you can even create the same thing with your original layers. So it's just keeping them all separate so you can actually edit them. So I'll just go through and pick one that's quite interesting. So I'll go for that one. And also you can play around with the opacity and the fill percentages in your layers. So they've all got separate settings for that. So you can edit them as well to see what sort of effects you can get. I'm just going to do one more and then we can put that effect into repeat. So Once you've edited the layers and you're quite happy with the outcome of that tile, the visual outcome, then you can define it into a pattern. So if you click into Edit, Define Pattern, I'm going to call that Pattern 2, OK, and I'll click back into the A4 document, and you don't need to delete that layer, you just simply double click into the pattern fill box, and you've got the pattern fill here, drop down menu, and it'll bring up your library. So this is the pattern we've just defined with the new effect layers. So again, you can do exactly the same with the percentage. So 20%, you can go obviously higher, 150 and 100%. So that's how to apply different effects to duplicate layers and then define that pattern for repeat. I'm going to show you how to create a range of colorways using your pattern repeat design, which you've previously created using the tile. I've got here a document which I've filled with a pattern for my pattern library. And you can see on the right hand side I've got a background layer which is white, and I've got my pattern fill layer which is on top. And if you can't see your layers panel, you can click into window and layers just halfway down, and that will bring up your layers panel on the right hand side. I just want to show you this quickly before we go into our colorways. If you go into your pattern fill layer and double click on the pattern box here, you'll get this dialog box, and it will give you options to then go back into your pattern library to choose a different pattern if you wish. So just on this side, on the left hand side, you've got a pattern box and an arrow drop down menu. If you click into it, this will go into your pattern library. So all these patterns I've previously created, and I can flick back through them and I can choose a different pattern if I wish. And also, just at the top here, you've got scale percentage, so you can change the scale of your pattern. So at the moment, I've got 100% for this pattern. You can click into the scale box, delete what you've got, and you can type in the percentage that you'd like to use. So this is 50%, this is 20%, and so on. So you can do that with all your patterns. So if I put in 100% for now, and I'm gonna go back into that pattern library, and I'm gonna just choose that pattern again. Once you've chosen your pattern and the scale, click OK. So back to the colorways. So the first thing you need to do is to flatten your layers. So you go into layer and scroll down to the bottom, merge visible. So now you've got a compressed background layer. So I'm going to duplicate that layer 2 more times. So that will give me 3 colorways in total that I can work with. So to duplicate it, you click into layer in the menu bar at the top, scroll down to duplicate layer, and I'm going to name this layer colorway 1, then click OK. And I'm going to duplicate that same background layer. Again, I'm going to call it colorway 2. Then OK. So I have my colorway 1, colorway 2, and I'm going to change the background layer into colorway 3. So if you hover your mouse on the text which says background, double click, you can now change it. So colorway 3, click OK. So now I've got my 3 colourways. So I'm going to work on colourway 1. So I'm going to keep that layer visible and make it active. And I'm going to hide the other 2 layers by clicking into the eye symbol on the left hand side of that layer panel. And I'm going to use my magic wand. So on the toolbar on the left hand side is the 4th tab down the list, and if you hover your mouse or scroller onto that tab and click down, hold the the mouse down, you will then see 3 selection tools on that list, and the magic wand is the bottom one in the list there. There you go, magic wand. And I've got 3 settings to set on the preset bar at the top there. So I've got tolerance, which I need to put down to 0. So you click into the box, delete what's in there and type in 0. I've got the tick box next to the tolerance, which is anti-alias. So make sure that's unticked. And I've got the contiguous box. Again, if it's ticked, you need to untick that. So those are the 3 preferences for the magic wand you need to set before you start using it. So now I can choose any of the marks or the background in my design to now recolor. So I'm going to choose the pink, the light pink first, so you can see straight away it selected that same mark throughout the document, which makes it easier to now fill all together at the same time. I'm going to use my modify tool, which is in select at the top, modify. I'm going to expand my selection to 2 pixels. So again, you can click into the box and type in 2 and click OK. This just enables you not to get the white or dark halo around your mark once you've filled it. So that will stop that happening. I'm going to choose my colour in my swatches panel. So again, if you can't see your swatches panel, you can click into window and down to swatches. So all these colours are previously selected and added to my swatches. It just makes it a lot easier and quicker to work that way. So I'm going to choose a colour. I'm going to go for the olive green. Once you've clicked on that colour in your swatches, if you look down into the toolbar, you've got the foreground colour picker, which shows the colour that I've selected for fill. So now I'm going to use a shortcut way to fill that area. So the shortcut is pressing the Alt key in your keyboard and then clicking the backspace tab on the keyboard, and that will then fill that area all at the same time. I'm going to deselect my current selection just to see the outcome, and there you have it. I'm going to do exactly the same with the background. I'm going to click with the magic wand in the background. I'm going to go up to my swatches. I'm going to choose that dark blue colour and now fill the background with that blue, and now deselect it. So I'm really happy with this colourway. I'm going to leave it as it is, and I'm going to work now in my colourway 2 layer. So I'm going to hide colourway 1, that's finished, and I'm going to make colourway 2 layer visible. And I'm going to do exactly the same with the magic wand. I'm going to change the background first and make it into this nice yellow, and then fill it. And I'm going to change that light pink. So select it with the magic wand. I'm going to choose the olive green. And I'm going to use my modify selection tool. So select, modify, expand, 2 pixels, and I'm going to now fill it. And now I'm going to change the bright pink, exactly the same. So I'm going to go back into select, modify, expand by 2 pixels, and I'm going to choose that bright blue and fill that selection. So there you have it. Now I've got 3 different colorways. So if we start at the top, make that one visible, colorway 1, colorway 2, and colorway 3. So now I can export those layers and save them as separate files to then use in a later stage for presentation boards, research boards, etc. So to do that, you go into File, Export, Layers to Files. It will ask you where you'd like to save them. So if you click Browse, I'm going to save them onto my desktop for the moment. Click Open, and the file name prefix is speckled pattern. The file type I'm going to save them is PSD. Then click Run. So this message is saying export layers to files was successful. So that's perfect. Click OK. We can now open those separate files. File open. And I can see them on my desktop. So colorway 1, 2 and 3. So I'm going to click into the first file, hold down the shift key and click into the third file and press open. So now I can see I've got colorway 1, colorway 2 and colorway 3 as 3 different files. So they are actually still in a layer format. So you can flatten them, compress them and save them as a JPEG or a TIFF file, which means you can then open them in other softwares to work with, such as InDesign if you want to do presentation board or research board later on. So to do that, you go into Layer, Flatten Image, and now File, Save As, Save on your computer, and you can change the format now to TIFF or JPEG, whichever one you'd like to use, and click Save. Image compression, make sure None is selected, and then click OK. So now you've got this colorway as a TIFF format, which makes it accessible for other softwares to use. In this video, I'm going to show you how to save your pattern file as a JPEG or a TIFF, and you can open that up in different applications thereafter. So first thing you need to do is flatten the layers. So you click into Layer, Merge Visible. So you now have a compressed background layer. And from here you can save it. You can click into File, Save As, Save on your computer. So in the format, it's a drop down menu, so you can save it as a JPEG or a TIFF. So I'll save it as a TIFF, and I'm going to name it Repeat Pattern 1. And again, you can save it in different locations, so I'm going to save it on the desktop. I'm going to click Save. Image compression, make sure None is selected, and then you click OK. So now this file is a TIFF file, and you can open it in different programs to use.